Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about gameplay options. Now, a few months ago, I did a video on game difficulty settings and talked about the pros and cons of different difficulty settings you should put in a game. But in the comment section, a bigger discussion happened about just gameplay options in general, way more than just difficulty settings. And one of the things that came up was people talking about games that have a lot of gameplay settings, gameplay options. Now, there are people who like them, and they like them for the obvious reasons of, I like to be able to customize the game exactly how I want to play it, which I get. And I probably fall in that category a lot more than the people who do not like having lots of gameplay options. But I actually talked to a few people in the comment section, took some notes, have been ruminating on it for a while, decided to do a video on it to give people, to basically, if you want to keep talking about it, here's a video to focus on it. But also I want to talk about the three big arguments on why people do not like having lots of customizable gameplay options. I wouldn't say these are the only three, but these are the frequent three. So I'll try to summarize them here. And by the way, just to make it completely and utterly clear, I'm not talking about accessibility options. Those are things like color blindness and subtitles and font sizes and input customization and gamma correction. These are things that people need either to be able to play the game at all because maybe they're hard of hearing or have bad vision, but some people need them because of how they play. You may be playing the game on a computer monitor, 2 feet from your face. You may be playing it on a TV screen in your living room that's 20 feet away from your face. Those probably need different options to make that game playable for you. What I'm talking about here are options that literally change how the game plays. So I'm talking about gameplay options. So the first argument I've heard about these gameplay options and reasons not to have them is a really strong one to argue against, and that is all those options have to be tested. And all the resulting combinations of those options have to be confirmed that the game is still viable when that combination is used. And by viable, I mean that all the different builds that you're playing can still make it to the end of the game. One of the examples that came up in comments was quest markers. If your game has an option, a gameplay option to turn on and off quest markers, well, a lot of people are like, well, that's a standard. But many people very wisely pointed out that if your narrative designers or level designers assumed that quest markers would be available, the NPC may not have given the player enough information to find the place they're supposed to go. If they're supposed to go find a cave, did they describe where the cave was on the map? Did they describe what it looked like? Did they describe, what was maybe around it? Like, oh, this cave is located on the south face of the pointy mountain, the mountain that looks like a cone, or it's on the Oni mountain that's a volcano or whatever. Give you some idea of how to get there. If they don't say that, if they just go, oh yeah, Bob stole that and he's hiding out in Shadow Cave. If that's all they say, you probably need a quest marker. And the point that people are trying to make there is if your designers are designing for a certain combination of gameplay options, well, then you kind of need them and they can't be options anymore. Another example of that came up with difficulty settings, which applies to gameplay settings as well, is you better test every single player build on every combination of those options. Congratulations, your test plan just got geometrically, if not exponentially, bigger. And because it's a test plan that you're going to be paying to have tested, the time and money you spend on it just got geometrically or exponentially bigger. Congratulations. Also, bear in mind, and this is the most annoying part about you spending a lot of time in those test plans and doing the testing, is you might spend 50% of your testing time and budget on game option combinations that end up being used by maybe less than 2% of your player base. Which, by the way, is another reason I think, I love metrics. But the more gameplay options you have, the more combinations you have, the more it breaks up your game playing groups into smaller chunks of these are the people who tend to use this combination, these are the people who use this combination. And some of those combinations require more testing than others, even though they're not used more by other people. That will drive any of the production people on your development staff crazy. I've driven a number of production people literally insane. So take my word on that. Okay, the second biggest argument, or the second most frequent argument I hear against having lots of gameplay options, is players react badly to having lots of choices. This is the one that surprised me the most. This is the one that I had to read the comments and push them into my brain. Some people out there said they literally get choice paralysis, that they open up gameplay options. Maybe they're like, oh, I'm just going to change my inventory to, by default, sort by weight. And they open up the gameplay options and there are 10 pages of options with 20 options on each one, and some of them are sliders and some are numerical values, and they're just like, oh, and they have choice paralysis. Then others will go in to make changes and not realize that something they did made the game a lot harder, because they forget that they changed one of the sliders from normal to medium or whatever. I mean, it may be that the option doesn't really convey what it does very well. Or worse, they may blame the game for being too hard to play without realizing that one of those, like slider 57 on page 3, would have made that game, would have gotten rid of that friction point altogether for them. But they didn't know because there were just so many things to look at. They're like, I can't find this. And then there was funny, people will use options that they hate. They hate that option is there, and they hate the setting they put it on, but they do it anyway. And then they blame the game. The two that I saw in there was, some people mentioned that if a game has a save anywhere option, you can save anywhere. You can save in the middle of combat. You can save when you're away from town. You can save anywhere you want. They will then save scum. Even if that results in making the game less challenging, they will do it and then be upset with the game. Bear in mind, they don't have to save scum. They don't have to do that. But they will if the game lets them. And they're blame the game. And then the other side of that is there are people who said they will always turn on quest markers if the game lets them, even if they prefer to have them off. And even if the game is fully playable and fun with them off, they won't. They'll turn them on just because the option is there, and they will be mad at the game for having that. I don't know how to fix that. You can't really address that in those people. It's what they like. You can't really argue with what people like. The only option is, let's not give options for that. So, and then the third thing that I've heard frequently, and this is from other devs, maybe even ones that were on my team, they don't like having all those options. And many of them express the reasons I've already given, but a couple more is, one, they have to make all those options. They have to code and do user interface and then test all those options. You just made their work a lot harder. And this is like in addition to making the game. The other thing I've heard devs say is, would you just decide as the game director what game you want and then make that game? Several people have accused me of putting in lots of game options because I wasn't sure of what worked. And rather than try it and test it and commit, I just push that off onto players saying, here's a bunch of game options, rock on. And then the other thing I've heard people say is, why are we making 2 or 3 or more games? Because some of the game options are so significant. They change the underlying game in such a major way that you're effectively making 2 or 3 or more games because they're wildly different. So those are things I've heard from other game developers, sometimes on the game I'm making. Anyway, so the point of this video is, if you're making a game, please think about your game options, your gameplay options very, very closely before you commit to them. Having too many is just as bad as having too few. I hope this helps.